Here we go. All right, let's do this. We're good. Perfect. Yeah. Am I getting better? Beautiful. Perfect. All right. So welcome everyone to the Monday, May the 8th Committee of the Whole for Administration and Operations. The next item on agenda, or excuse me, first I will recognize that Councillor Chris Ward and Councillor Joe Martel are absent tonight. We still have quorum with the three, and we have both of our community advisory members, Mr. Hunter and Mr. Rossi, with us as well. So I don't think there's anybody on Zoom, and I think that's it. So the next item, I guess, on our is the approval of the agenda. So I need a mover for that. Moved by Councillor Smale, seconded by Deputy Mayor Billabon. Are there any changes or any additions? Anything? No. Okay, so then I'll call for the approval of the agenda. All in favor? Yes. So number 3 is disclosure of pecuniary interest in the general nature thereof. Does anyone have any disclosures to make? And hearing none, we'll move on to business arising from previous minutes. Does anyone have any business arising from these minutes? Going once? Nope. Going twice. So, okay, moving on to delegations and presentations. We don't have any. Under consent agenda, items listed under consent agenda are considered routine and no longer require further discussion and enacted in one motion. The exception of this rule is that a member requests that one or more items be pulled from the discussion and voted on separately. Before we move forward, the record that comes to the recommendation is that the following consent agenda items be received as and approved as presented. So, does anyone at the table want any of those 3 removed for discussion?
That AP, AV, and ADF, right?
I think you're looking at AVs. And one of those, yeah, that's right. Nope, you're good. I'm good. All right. So I need a mover for that to move those 3. Okay. Oh yes, it is right. So there is a recommendation. The recommendation is that the following consent agenda items be received and approved as presented. Which is A, the first quarter fire report, B, which is the 2022 municipal election financial filing compliance report, and C, the purchase file code for the OCR module. And I have a mover for that. So moved by the deputy mayor, seconder. Councillor Smale, is there any discussion in regard to? We don't do any discussion at all, right? That's the whole idea, is that there's no discussion. So then I will call the question. All in favor? Of course, it's unanimous. Move on to discussion items. Deputy Mayor Dillabaugh, you have a discussion item that you ask to be included in this agenda in the future township capital community donations.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a brief information only for tonight. I'd like to get some input from our committee. Is when we had our community grants that were available, it didn't include really in some stuff of capital. In other words, to give you an example of the Cardinal Legion put forward a project, and it didn't fit in the criteria. So, and the Spencerville Legion actually put in one too. So what I'm trying to do here, I'd like some information, some input from our committee is I would like to bring forward maybe that next year, 2024, we set aside $20,000 for capital money, approximately $20,000 capital money, maximum of $5,000 for each application. So if we only get 2 applications, then it's only $10,000, $5,000 each. I don't think it's right to get into the 5, 10s, or 15,000. So I think it's just a small little amount. We may be able to help small nonprofit organizations. So that's my pick. I'd like some input and discussion on if I can.
All right. So open it to the floor for discussion. So I think before we begin, it's probably worthwhile noting that with this year's budget, there was an end to the 75,000 capital donation from the port.
Yeah.
So I think the idea is that those organizations that did apply, the Legion organizations may have applied for port funds. This sort of helps offset those. Is it safe to assume? Probably not ever safe to assume. Do you have a funding source for the 20K? You have a suggestion?
No, that's gonna be. I mean, that might be coming out of just like with our grants that we have, so that, our grants that we do through the year, we may have to bump that up from 35 to 55.
I think,
Or if you have a.
where do you get 20?
I just said, I did the 20 with 4 projects in mind a year.
Where are you getting it?
Well, and that's exactly where I'm coming from the organizations that we did for grants and donations. We had the 15,000, I'd like to bump it up, yes, to 35.
So you don't really have a funding source.
No.
So I think for me,
2022.
for me, it would be logical, as it was part of the, the reasoning behind your ask is that there's 20K for capital and we got rid of the 75 capital from the port. That maybe the, that reserve fund that's created could be the source of funds for it.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, makes sense. I mean, I can get.
First of all, I just want if the committee feels that's the right
path
to go to.
Or that was my own
On their
concern.
grants and
Where you
donations.
yeah, so, for discussion then.
I'm actually all for it. I think it's a good idea.
John, anything?
Well,
There's not a lot of info, so.
no, much information to go on there, I don't really think that, the capital reserve fund that we set up coming from the port, that 1% should be dedicated to go to community projects that were set up in the first place to help the township with roads and building projects that were supposed to go to, not basically having the community decide what they want to spend money on for individual things. If we set up supposedly for the benefit of the whole township to help cover deficit and infrastructure repairs.
So you prefer to see the source of funding something other than, or you think it's more appropriate,
Well,
a different source of funding?
council will to do that. I think that should be something to work into the budget, so.
Of the 20,000, you mean, John?
Yeah. Under the taxation.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, just trying to.
2024, I just want to get your input, is it, should we be doing something like this?
I don't know, there's a lot of federal and provincial grants that's available to nonprofit groups for capital.
Yeah.
When we set this up years ago, it was basically to help the nonprofit groups for something that wasn't capital, because there was very little funding available to any legions or anybody else to apply with a capital improvement for a kitchen or something. There's one area where the grants that they could apply for to get, but if it was just a maintenance thing, there's very little any place to get. That's what, when it was originally years ago started, was to help them with these maintenance. Paint, $1,000 paint job, the Legion had to do or something. They had no money for it. There was nothing, either fundraised or township or sponsor helped them out on it, because there just isn't a funding source that are yet available. I know it's been lobbied by our MPs and MPPs and stuff over the years of lobbying, trying to get something to maintain. Even the township trying to apply for grants to maintain arenas and stuff. They're just, we got shot down hundreds of times. It just wasn't there.
Yeah, I think, going back to, earlier in the minutes, we went to the community grants and donations portion, right, of what we gave out, and we certainly saw, a pretty large ask. So we were only able to do about half of them. Half of them didn't qualify, and we just, we recognized that, you know, on, some of them probably would have qualified under the capital donations from the port. So we're just looking to see, or Steve's looking to see if, Deputy Mayor's looking to see if there, you know, was an avenue there to, you know, kind of offset the loss of that.
I think that's something that falls on your council deciding your next taxation budget, whether you wanna.
Yeah, and I'm looking for 2024, exactly. It could be coming from taxation.
Yeah. So,
But I just want the input.
yeah, so supportive, not supportive? Neutral?
Neutral, it depends a lot on the project.
Yeah, well-
Something the council's got, you maybe can put the money there, but I think it's something the council has to be very careful about what they
What you find.
actually fund.
Yeah, that's good, yeah, it's great to have those words, so.
I have to agree, it depends on the project you're looking at, I mean, there's so many. Charities out there, not for profits that are looking for funding, that, you know, it's kind of a bit of a hard sell if you're going to. Do it through taxes and people are saying, well, where's the money going? People might not want it to go to that organization, they want it to go to a different org, it just becomes a whole.
In favor of,
mixed bag.
in favor of the concept,
I'm in favor of the concept, I don't.
In other words, with big money.
Don't.
yeah, fair, and how you're gonna allocate it.
Exactly.
And how those are,
Yeah.
those are the minutia, the details, yeah,
Exactly.
okay, all right, so did you get the?
Yeah, I think so. I'd like to maybe,
Something.
yeah, and maybe. See if staff can. See if it's possible that we could apply for some kind of grant, maybe. For the 2024. Or these, like term grants or whatever, I'm not sure if we can do something like that. To get it, or do we go under taxation? And bring it up at another meeting with our other two councilors. I just like a little bit more input on it, before I shut the door completely, or how we're gonna get the money.
Through the chair.
Yes.
To the deputy, or, this would be something that would be, best served to be discussed in the fall. We have all of our pre-budget discussions. Since, everything was very condensed this year when we did it because of the election. So next year, or this coming year, we've got the time that we can discuss these types of items and decide if it is going to be part of the budget, and then I can certainly build that in and then have the discussion on how is that supposed to be allocated, and what is the criteria so that we're fair.
Good, thank you, Mr. Fisher. Yeah, I'm good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think, yeah. I think I know your question, but. Go ahead.
Maybe not. So is the thought that this would be an annual item?
Yes,
And the thought would be that the same organizations could apply annually to receive capital?
well, that's something I think we have to discuss as a whole, like as a treasurer. As Mr. Treasurer put it, you know, at the time of our budget in September, October, we start doing it. I think that's where we come together and clarify some of them roadblocks that are gonna be in the way.
So that would be different than the facade improvements that we already have set up with respect to covering some of those capital items up to that. So is there like, are they able to leverage the facade improvements in addition, another $5,000 or whatever to complete a project, or is it you can do one or you can do the other, or
No, I would like to say that it can only do one or the other, and it has to be capital. In other words, we only give up to what, $2,000 if they're the delegation on our grants is part of our criteria. So I would like to just put a cap of 5,000 capital on improvements, And you can't apply under grants to get another 1,000 to make it 6,000.
But this, am I understand correctly, this would be a completely different stream. Because we have, right now, we have community grants and donations that really focus on a community event that's being held in a particular year.
Right.
So totally different than what we would consider
Yes,
a capital investment.
yes.
If I may jump in.
And
It really is ultimately, I think. The intention of the deputy, and I'm gonna speak for you because you've already said it, but is that it would almost be a replacement for that canceled work program. Because there was, rules and bylaw or whatever in place, guidelines for how that money could be allocated and could be spent, and I think you just basically said that you don't want it to be applicable if they're applying for CIP, so no double dipping.
Right.
That's, I think that's,
in a smaller scale, obviously.
So with the potential policy framework that needs to be developed, it would be similar to that previous program. That when Ryan was with the Board of Johnson.
Covered a lot of the red tape, if you can say. That's, yeah, if you can reduce the red tape, I can maybe go along with that. I definitely don't want to spend what we did on that for $5,000 for each project. Up to 4 projects.
and if I was inputting on this as well, I certainly don't want staff running the project.
No,
Because I think that was, to me, that was part of the core, but I think the framework of it's pretty good, but I think the organization has to be the one to do the work. We would just fund them for a portion of the work. That's the way I see it.
and the reason why I brought this was because of the grants and donations, where we had a couple that, I wish we could have helped, but we just didn't have the money to help. And it was a capital expense on those projects, so just thought that maybe we would.
So would it make sense then to have some sort of report back then on how we could make some kind of there?
And where we're gonna get it, I mean, our treasurer already said
That makes sense.
we can sit down on that. At budget time and see where we can allocate, maybe we can't, maybe it's not there.
That's fair as well,
Yeah,
but so your time frame would be like the fall, by the fall.
yeah, that's fine, I guess reasonable. I like it.
That
Yeah.
clear as mud.
Yeah, well, we can certainly look to try to draft an initial policy framework. I think at least what I see as a little bit of an obstacle is with respect to funding source with taxation when we're already in the midst of a infrastructure. Yeah. On the capital side. So it's just something that will need to be considered when we have that discussion in the fall.
Okay.
For sure.
Thank you.
Got enough to bring us something back though that we can chew on? We need more.
Well, I think we have a starting point for sure, but we'll look to bring it back from.
Go back before free, but
At least some modifications.
Yeah.
Maybe be incorporated.
okay, all right, good start to that, I think. Some info. All right, so the next one open for discussion is for Pride Month, and it's to deal with the banner and flag request that we have. So I'm gonna look to staff first before we start the discussion. You've certainly included some stuff from the last meeting or from the last council. I mean, when we had this discussion regarding the Pride Walk. And certainly there's a request to put, to put the banners up. My thought was, and I know it's not in the minutes, my thought was that we'd already decided to do that was the minimum we were gonna do, but I'm wrong in thinking that. I think I'll wear that, openly on the record, because I thought that the last council had made that decision, and it's certainly not that way in reviewing the minutes. So I think my idea of bringing this forward was so that we can actually get that supported and get that done for this year. I think there's a bigger discussion that we continue to, need to have to, to be in support of the, the LGBTQ plus community. But I think this is, in my eyes, a good start. And I thought we even had the support of the last group, and I think it needs to be a discussion here, obviously, first. There's a few questions that have to be answered if we're going to do that. Support, how, where, when, who's paying, that sort of stuff. But I think it's going to open a bigger discussion as well, because, after reviewing, I've talked with the FCs about the flag bylaw, and we certainly, I believe that there needs to be an update, number one, to the bylaw, and then I also, believe that the Canadian flag should always fly alone. So, a way to sort of balance and make everything work in harmony. So that's why I brought it forward, because I think we need to make sure that we support all communities. And we certainly can't do that with the flag situation we have. So there's almost two conversations there, because the flag bylaw can be a different discussion later, I suppose, but yeah, it's about Pride Month and being supportive of the banners and flag requests. So I'll give it to you guys. Maybe you have some input first, and then we can have a discussion at the table. Any input from staff at all on this?
Mr. Mayor, I would say that the flag policy would need to be a discussion at a later time through that process. For sure, given consideration, but it's probably well worth to have a follow-up discussion with respect that took place in the fall of 2022, where the previous council had sort of passed it on to the incoming council to do some further consideration with respect to what if anything should be
Yeah, and I just want to make sure my background is right. And I guess going back in my background, we had decided against a walk. Like that was, it was pretty clear that the group at the table then didn't want a Pride Walk, but what we came up with was how we supported veterans, which in my recollection of this discussion was, the banners that we hang for Remembrance Day. And so I just want to make sure that I've got that.
So yeah, Mr. Mayor, the approach, a little bit more back with respect to the veterans. There was a request made with respect to a copy crosswalk at a couple locations. One in the village of Central and one in the village of Cardinal. The thought was with respect to maintenance and some other areas that it would probably be a better show of display to look at having banners installed near the Senate in the village of Cardinal and by the Legion in the village of Cardinal, and in similar form in front of the Spencerville Legion and the Senate here in Spencerville. So I think that moving forward with respect to the crosswalk request, the coming feeling was that there wasn't much appetite around the table in the fall to do the crosswalk, but certainly you are correct. There was some interest with respect to banners, but no decision or direction provided.
Okay, and I think, you know, that again, my misunderstanding, I think of that is, I think in my mind, I remember that, I'm just gonna have to wear that one, I remember it, in my mind was different. I had thought that we had done the go-ahead and my fault for not, actually making sure that it was brought forward. And I thank the residents for holding me accountable, making sure that it did get this, brought forward, because I honestly, I missed it. So, it's here for discussion tonight. I guess that's a very good background, and I'd like to hear more discussion on it so that we can, you know, hopefully get some support, and get, you know, supported, in June's support requirement. So, anyone want to open?
Yeah, I'll go ahead, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, fire away.
Thank you. I'm like you, I thought we did that last term, that, I knew we weren't with crosswalks, but I'm sure that we had banners. I apologize deeply. But going forward, Pride Month, is, I think June 1st to June 30th. Correct me if I'm wrong, please, or, okay, and, I would like to move at least to get some prices as soon as possible, because we're running out of time. I do believe this will be the last meeting, won't it? With the committee of the whole administration.
So, through the chair, the rough estimate is, I'm going to say $1,000 for 6 banners with the brackets, plus we can hold the installation cost of staff. It's at least, you know, and that's preliminary follow up.
That's the brackets too.
$1,000 for six.
Set up banners.
Well, that's a start. And will we have them by June 1st? That's the next thing.
My understanding is that that would be, they would be, they could be installed.
So we'll install them to each, the month it starts on the Pride month, and then we take them down and store them and bring them back. Put them up like Remembrance Day next and so on, so.
I have a question. Are the brackets attached to the banner, or can they be used for other banners? So that if, you know, like the SBCC wanted to use the banners to, or the brackets to do Whoville, to do, you know, they have their 4 events during the year, the brackets are reusable bracket.
I believe that, you know, as long as it was a standard size, that banner could be removed. Yeah.
So the banner just taking them down at the end of the month, put back up next year at the same time, and then if anybody else had a request, they could request that we hang their banners.
Theoretically, yes. Yes, but I would think it would be more of a policy discussion with respect to that.
What we hung. That's the flag. Because to me, the flag banner discussion is all part of that same bottle.
Bigger policy.
Yeah, I definitely agree. That's why I brought it. Yeah. Sort of why I brought it up as well. I'm not sure it's as simple as the way we're gonna do this, but I think hopefully we'll be able to get something done for banners. So Karen, Don.
I think that's a great idea, because if we don't do something, every other municipality in the city is doing something, we're gonna look a little out of place. And I agree with the banners, I like that idea. Especially if you can use other banners on them, like use them for a month and then go ahead with something else.
Supportive.
Yeah, I'm definitely supportive.
I have no problem with banners, I have no problem with the price, I think it's awful pricey for 6 of them. $90 for 6. What's I assume the brackets are the dearest part of it.
No, the brackets aren't that expensive, but there is an initial setup fee to have the flags done. They're not just standard. And so there are 6 ones, they are the full length ones. The ones that we purchased for the Remembrance Day ones, cost just a little bit more, but we had more quantity, but they were smaller flag,
Yeah.
like not the size. So these are a full size, and like when you went to the town of Prescott or the town of Temple, you see the full size flags. That's what the banners, that's what these would be. So they're not small in nature.
So, through the chair to
That includes installation costs.
Mr. Spencer, you say there's a setup.
That's correct. The community.
That seems out of place to me, the amount of pride banners that are up around the country, I would think that company must already have the setup for making them.
It's not.
Oh, $8,000. I have no problem with it. I just have a problem with the setup, in charge of the setup, because I'm sure it's hard, like, the city of Toronto must have 10,000 of them, so I'm sure that the company doesn't have to set up to make them. Maybe a lot of we're dealing with the wrong company that hasn't made them before, but
It's the same company that we dealt with for the Remembrance Day, and then was a small setup, these small.
But supportive of the. event.
oh, I'm for it, for that, I'm just. Can you look it up? Yeah,
Fully supportive.
I think it's an easy one to support, isn't it?
Yeah, it was an easy one to support. Can I ask, like, being completely new to this now, what type of banners are we talking about? Like the ones going into Prescott for the Legion, the
That is what.
Remembrance Day ones, so they're
Yeah.
paying for the like post type
Yeah,
thing?
the town of Prescott ones, I believe, is a Fort Town or.
Yeah, they have the Prescott ones, and then further in, they have the ones with the copies
They're not
on.
an actual flag, so like the big flag,
Right,
they're like a banner type.
and they come down on
Yeah,
the street.
high quality material, the standards, the high winds and whatnot.
Right, okay, that's, yeah.
Okay,
I might have one more
yeah,
question. We're talking $1,000 for tickets, right?
$166 each.
So. If we pay the setup fee and stuff, this stuff costs us money, but, is it cheaper to, that we could have more, for just a few dollars more, that we could have more than 6? That's a good question.
Well, if we, sorry, if we were purchasing 20 of them, it would be a different price, and we're only for 6. The price, there's a flat price, flag,
That's what I'm getting at.
yeah,
If we're-
but.
What the difference is, if you're getting 20,
I really think the flat price is $95 per flag. So. I don't think, I mean, if we ask for 15 or 20, then maybe we'll get them for maybe 85. But that's the other question, is then how many flags do you want and what location do you want to put one?
fair, yeah. And I think, you know, for this group, and then I know how this group, you know, at the table, and we've certainly all heard from them speaks, and it just, I think getting something done this year is the right, you know, the right thing that we, you know, should, at the minimum, we should be doing, and then I think we can work with, you know, the community, and we can certainly grow into and hopefully, you know, find a place for a flagpole that's suitable for, you know, community events and community groups, you know, but I think that this signals, you know, that Edwardsburg Cardinals come to 2023 and it's time, you know, so I think it's clear at the table that it's, you know, supportive, and I guess my question to staff would be, will we see this at council? Like, how do we deal with this from here forward? I mean, it's 5 yeses here. What do we need to do? It's a discussion item, but what else do we need to do?
Well, if you're looking to have the items in place by June first, council is May 29th. I think as part of the discussion, we need to know how many, where you want to place them. And that's when that question. It would be something that, I would have to authorize in advance of council final approval through resolution. That's the only way that
We have a firm quote for 6.
we have a firm goal for six.
What about firm quote for 6? So what's your question?
Two, one, where we're gonna put them. And two, if we're gonna do it in the town of Spencerville, we should be thinking of the town there. So we went from 6 to 12, maybe. Well,
So
that's,
through the, yes, so through the chair, the.
or we go 3 and 3.
The reason that it was 6 was, in reality was a 2, 2 and 2.
It's
2
2,
in Spencerville,
sorry,
2 in Cardinal, 2 in Topsfield. That was the thought. That's the reason between, for the quote, the 6.
so we're gonna have 2 in Cardinal, 2 in Johnstown, 2 in Spencerville?
Was a thought on, you asked where the number of 6 came from, that's where, that's where the number of 6 came from. I don't know where committee and council want to install. I'm just letting you know that's where,
I'm just going.
that's where the number of 6 came.
And I guess if I go back and my thought is that when we were. The original question was for Spencerville, but we do think of things as, municipality, not just individual towns. We're trying to get away from that as much as we can. So it's one municipality. So as much as, I guess in my mind, I was thinking 6 in Spencerville, and I was thinking 6 is probably just about right. So we're gonna be a little short in that regard, but 2, 2 and 2 is a start. It's better than nothing. And it gives us time to, and again, I'll wear this one for not having it done earlier, but it gives us time to do the other discussions we need to have to be able to do more. So, I mean, I'm still going to be supportive of whatever staff says, and I think 2, 2 and 2 works. 6 is a good start in my opinion. And is there nodding heads?
So, yeah, so that, with respect to the timing,
How do we get there?
with respect to the timing, we ended up getting prices on 6. I was just indicating where the number of 6 came from. If you want to place 6 in Spencerville, that's fine. It's not a staff decision. And that, like, in that regard, it's just like, I just want to, because if we didn't have the pricing and we didn't have any information for tonight, we would not be in place for June 1st. We're on a very tight timeline, so if you want all 6 to go in Johnstown, if that's the will and that's the decision, that's fine as well. Like, we're just trying to give enough information that if you are interested in proceeding and you want to proceed by a particular date, that we can do our best to try to have items in place.
Okay, so we've concept wise, I think, the idea is that staff's done the research for 6. We know the cost of what 6 are. And we know that they can be ready for June 1st.
This year we will do our best to get rolling different best chance to be ready.
Okay. And because we don't have a recommendation. And I can't put you on the spot for a recommendation like that. We have to just give you a recommendation. So what's the will? What does everybody want to see? Karen?
I'm just kind of rattling around my head as to where they would go. I wonder if it would be better this year to start with the 6 in Spencerville. Because 2, where are you gonna put 2? That, like, to me, more is makes that visibility, right? Like it stands out better. So, and in Johnstown, where would you put it to that people would see them? Here, maybe, but. You know, maybe, right? So I just wonder if we start with the 6 in Spencerville this year. And then we should build on that and get some for Cardinal and then for Johnstown next year.
Thank you. Yeah. good input.
Yeah, I'm 100% for it. I want all three areas, so I don't want that Spencerville taken away from Cardinal, vice versa. I mean, duly chair to Mr. Spencer, what happens if you price of 12, would you be going down a little? They
Through the
didn't
chair
know.
to Deputy Mayor Luan, as I indicated with Mr. Hunter. If it went down $5 or $10, that would be it. I can't see it coming down any more than that, to be quite honest with you.
Maybe 2000,
Mhm.
2012. You're at 12?
Yeah.
Evenly divided?
That's what.
Me, I like the idea of getting them and putting them in Johnstown, Cardinal and Spencerville. You can put one on each island in Cardinal and down here, like there's spots for them, and then everybody, especially on Number 2 Highway, they're gonna be seen. I'm not saying that nobody goes to Spencerville, but there's a lot more people on Number 2 than there is in
So all
Spencerville.
all three and one.
Which is nice to have 12, but if we have 6, then we'll go with 6 to start.
I think section. Once you've got your budget set, you can just keep adding to it, but I think if you have 2 at each one, I don't know what Mr. Spencer was thinking, but I think if you have 2, one Mary and one Elizabeth, one is 5, one Mary, and one at each end coming into Cardinal, same Spencer, one at each end coming into the village, that's showing your pride in every area. A lot of municipalities simply have an extra flagpole or build them, they put the flag up for a month, and that's it. There's a flag fly in a 10 square mile township for every one flag flying. This at least each major community, you're gonna have a flag at each end if you're enter it anyway. You see the pride flag, so whatever you need. I don't know how much more attention you get if you have to drive down the street and you see 10 in a row, or whether you see one of each end in a row. It's kind of like Port Town, really. You see Port Town signs all the way down Prescott, but they spent on them like first visitor coming in, right, the first one, they pay no attention, but they're 15 down the street, they're all the same, so. I think,
So,
strategically located in each town, like that.
yeah, so six total for now.
Yeah,
And
keep your budget in
keep,
mind.
keep budget 6 supportive, all three towns, right? And I think that's my idea as well. I want to keep us as united as well. I agree with it, and I will wear it for everyone this time that
And I will say, I agree with you, I thought we passed it last time.
Yeah, me too.
and it's clearly not in the minutes, and it's
No.
clear that we didn't, but in my mind, we did, so. But it doesn't matter if we didn't.
It's a start.
It's my fault for not making sure it came forward, but 6, so I think it's clear, 6, three locations as staff deems the most visible and appropriate locations. Or do you want us picking these locations too?
You want me to make a motion?
Do you want us picking flag, like, locations to hang?
No.
Well, through so the only 2 locations that were considered like with respect to Spencerville, basically would be the proposed crosswalk location, which was Center Street by the clock tower, Spencerville, and on Water Street with that one. Where the two were just, and it was just basically from the presentation, but with respect to the Johnstown. And kind of that hasn't been in full consideration, the difficulty with putting it on County Road 2 in the village of Cardinal this summer is we're in the middle of a construction project. It may cause it could be in construction. I think if there's a consensus around the table of where you'd like those two, and the other in the other locations, then that would be helpful. I can probably assume that the administration is covering the cost.
Did you want to comment again?
No, I just want to make a motion for it. Do we need a motion?
Do we need a motion? Yes, so you've got one?
I'd like to make a motion that the committee recommends council direct staff to purchase and install 6 pride banners. And have staff put in location for 2024. Or 2023, sorry.
That thorough enough?
In Roscoe.
That'd be up to you, up to staff. Wait, I'll put you.
There needs to be a motion.
Needs to be added in the motion, we did indicate that the cost will come.
Sure, that's fine.
So can maybe the clerk or the deputy clerk read that back to us, then, so you know exactly what.
Okay, do you mind if I were?
Not at all, not at all. I prefer that you did it. It's not moved and it's not seconded, so we're good.
So if we share with the quick recommendation that we were to look at contract staff to purchase and install 6 banners and install them in the communities of Cardinal, Commissar, and Spencerville, and the copies currently to the registration.
I think that's perfect. That's good.
I just
Can I? Before that motion gets on the table, can I add to that motion? Is the chair allowed to, or do I have to remove myself? Because if I'm not allowed to, then I can't. No.
We would share, we share not move or second motions, but you can make friendly recommendations.
So I can make a recommendation to the folks that maybe at a later date that we look at a further discussion.
I think we probably just better sure council requires notice of motion.
I can bring it forward with that. It doesn't have to be somebody else.
I think that's.
Thank you, Steve. Okay, so leave it clean, okay.
Yes.
Excuse me, I just have that in your motion there, through the purpose. It's great. It says, I think you said the 6 banners. Could we just put 6 pride banners in there? Thank you.
So the additional.
Yeah, pride.
Okay, everybody's clear on the motion? Yes, all right, so then further discussion? Anyone? Yeah, I know, well, I'm gonna call for a second, but I just want to sit this further discussion. Okay, so you moved. You're seconding, then if there's no further discussion, going down, all right, all in favor? Good. So we'll get 6 installed and hopefully they'll be there by June 1st. Okay, all right, so action items then, we are looking at. Yeah, it turned into an action item. All right, so 8A, which is the first quarter building report, and Dwayne. Am I right on that? Yes. Yeah. Yep, okay, do you want to bring that forward?
The first quarter report that we get working with if you can pretty month. That includes 2 new residential units, then also building demolition permits. But it also includes that we have a couple of trees and buildings and permits that have now renovation permits. So, I think we require, I would say, about the right here, very soon, and raise the option, you know, minutes and, on, the street. The other one is, the 161, at the end, commercial development on that, they will come from the office. The first fees are down and the first construction costs are down, but we did, we haven't had a lot of permits in the first thing of the year. And when you compare it to the last year, our total construction costs are down by the $3.5 million. And that's basically what we haven't had. Really make we landed there's a lot of carryovers. We previous year a lot of late permits were issued for houses that started opening for rent. Some of them are just starting now. And of course, April was a big month for permits to get new houses. You should probably see a better support than water.
That's it. Good. Okay. All right. So questions regarding the quarterly building report. I'll start with Karen. Any questions? No. Deputy? Mr. Hunt? No. I think I have one regarding if there's. Am I allowed to ask? I don't know if I'm allowed to ask an update on a certain, am I allowed to ask to staff? Am I allowed to ask an update on a certain location? No, inappropriate.
What location you're looking to, put identify individuals. It's one that's known to the general public, it's
I'm not going to overstep, so if it's not appropriate, I won't ask. Okay. So two housing starts in the middle of a housing crisis. Certainly we're not delivering on are we doing anything? Is there anything we can be doing to help get starts, help get builders started? You know, our goal was more houses and not less, and we're seeing
not much and other than try to take possible.
Yeah.
A lot of it has to be done.
Yeah, and so we're just not getting the applications. It's not anything to do with us getting permits out fast enough or putting up barriers. We're just not getting the application. Right. We don't have any idea if that's lack of supply of lots or places to build or anything like that. We haven't heard.
I don't think there'd be an issue with basic costs available. Having to sit on some of them, but I think the rest of it's
Okay. Good. I think that takes care. Are there no other further questions? And thank you to the CEO for your report. B was covered under consent. So C I asked to be removed from consent agenda. I think PSAB is one of our responsibilities. It's required. And I wish there were two other folks here as well. I know this one's sometimes a difficult one to understand, and I asked to have this one removed so that we can all, whether it's a discussion or not, doesn't matter. I just think we need to review it. We need to try to understand it to the best of our ability. So if the treasurer would give us an update, we'll let PSAB update.
Thank you, Samir. So the purpose of this is to identify the impact on the township's accumulated surplus after reconciling the 2023 budget with PSAP, which is the Public Sector Accounting Board requirements of accounting for non-financial assets and liabilities. So you guys can read everything that's in the report. I think the best way that I can describe this is when we did our budget. That was basically revenues and expenses. And what is our capital program going to be? How's it going to be funded? So it always has to come to a zero. So, which works for us from a day-to-day perspective. However, from an accounting perspective, we have to take the other side of that too, which is to say, okay, well, how much is this capital going to add to our accumulated surplus or to our net worth? So if you think about the budget that we pass as the monthly budget we would stick to as a household, this is an impact of that budget on our net worth at the end of the year as a township. So rather than kind of go through everything that's in there, I'd rather just kind of walk through the actual addendum report. So everything that you see in the 2023 budget summaries, again, we have no, we passed the balanced budget, so there's no budgeted surplus or deficit. And then we have to take those accounting adjustments that are really non-cash items, a lot of them. The big things around reserves. So we take to and from reserves in order to balance the budget. However, from PSAP, you have to exclude those because you're basically forward from yourself. So you have to take out your transfers from reserves and then your transfers to reserves, and you take those out. And then you add your capital assets that you're doing. So our capital budget this year was 9.3 million, which is a record capital budget for us. Also, your principal payments on long-term debt, those get adjusted for us. And then, like anything, if you have a car, if you were treating that car as a business, you would appreciate that car each year. So the accumulated surplus of $80 million or so that we were at as a township, those capital assets have to be depreciated annually. So this is just the estimate on the amortization expenses based on what was in city limits. So that's not going to really have a lot of our capital assets, so this number may change. But then you get a total of 6.4 million, which would be expected that we'd be adding net to our surplus just for the township. But because we own the port, we have to take the port into consideration as well. So the number, the 3.699 million, that is just the approved budget of the port, revenue less expenses. But anything that would be regarded as a surplus would then be part of the overall value of the township. And then same with St. Lawrence, just our little equity adjustment in there. And then you add the 6.4 million from above, and you get a total impact of $10.1 million to our accumulated surplus. So I would expect that when we're reviewing a year from now, when council meets on the 29th, you will have the financial statements. I would expect that next year when we're doing that, we would see an add of $10 million to our overall surplus, provided everything stays on budget. Now, the only thing that we note in here is just some of the funding that we have. So we had a really large capital budget this year, but we also have a lot of the funding from all sources, federal all the way down to county. So all of that money is taken into consideration as well. Same with our regular grants that we would use for infrastructure. So that's just more of just for reference than anything. Because if you were to compare this report to last year's report, it's about $4 million high. So a lot of that is related to the grant money that we use. I hope I've done an okay job of
This is the glazed over.
and fully aware of that. So I will just take any questions.
But I think, and you know, you and I have had this discussion. I've had this discussion with the CAO, and I think this is why I pulled it out, right? Because ultimately we aren't experts, we're not financial experts, but we do make financial decisions. And we need to make sure that we have a good understanding of what we're doing. And we certainly have to make sure that we listen to and understand the information at the best of our abilities that our experts are providing us. And that's why I felt it was really relevant that we didn't do this on consent, because I think that the opportunity needs to be here for everyone to make sure that they understand, and they probably maybe don't have a lot of questions on it, but I think that it certainly needs to continually be discussed so we understand it to the best of our ability. So I'm gonna open it to questions. Mr. Hunter, do you have any questions?
No,
No, I just have a comment, but I think I'm better listening from him than trying to figure it out myself. So he did an excellent job.
Deputy?
Yeah, I have a couple. Is this is new from the provincial government, is that right, Mr. Fraser? This,
I think a couple of years ago.
PSAD, sorry?
This was put in a couple of years ago, I think, by the PSAD, that you had to do this budget amendment.
Oh, is this the first time? No?
No.
Last year, this was done as well.
Okay,
Through the chair, you would have seen it every year, through your entire job.
okay.
I'm not.
Pay more attention. Now, next question, you say like our assets and so on, or. So, we put, for an example, $5.2 million into our water and sewers in Cardinal. Will that be next year worth help us
Well,
as a surplus? Or-
yes,
no?
it goes to our accumulated surplus because it's assets that we
Right, so,
purchased and put into services.
okay, so it is helping us.
It is helping, yeah. And I would expect our amortization expense to start to creep up a little bit too. Because once the assets are put into service, then those costs are
Okay, that's okay.
appreciated.
Okay, so I can understand where you're saying we may be from 10 million to 20 million next year. Or 15 million,
I would hope it would be pretty close to this number.
okay,
Or else, there's something that fell in the process.
okay, good, okay, good, thanks. Good, Karen, you're good?
I think one of the concerns that we had was that the risk index was raised in a couple of regards, and this is going to help lower that exact line, right?
100%.
I know that I can't remember the name of what that FIR, was it FIR?
Yeah, the FIR is what the financial information return. I'll need to file that by the end of May, but it produces FITR. So and that's the risk matrix. So that will get.
And that'll put us hopefully back down into that low category and show that we're making the appropriate investments and we're closing that gap in infrastructure that we've had created over the years. Good. I just had, and they're just completely irrelevant questions, but so the Highway 2 project that we're doing, when we do this, we only write off like our portion of that as our asset. The rest of it doesn't become our asset, does it? The whole project becomes our asset? It does, even though the county pays portion of it. Interesting. Okay, cool. Then it wasn't, because I didn't have that in my notes. So, and I think that was it. Thank you. There's no recommendation or anything. That's just a report. There is a recommendation.
Yeah. So the recommendation is that
Oh, yeah.
the committee recommends that council adopt the 2023 PSAD budget dividend reports, which meets the requirements of regulation.
Oh, that's right. That's why we did it. Okay, so I need a mover. Moved by Councilor Smale, seconded by Deputy Mayor. Further discussion? All in favor? Okay.
So one correction, I guess when you mentioned like whether we own all of those assets. I mean, if we were doing the maintenance on them, then yes, we would own them. But some of the things that the county is paying for as far as the road surface, or County Road 2, that would be on
Okay, so it would show up on their PSAP?
there. Yeah, they're also paying 100% of the cost.
Right, yeah, but it would show up on their PSAP, right? Like that's,
But everything that's in the storm sewers,
Yeah.
that's all.
okay, yeah, that, I kind of thought that that's the way it worked, but I wasn't. All right, so we're on year-end surplus. Okay, so D then, item D, the 8D, which is the 2022 year-end township surplus, and I will give that to treasurer.
Thank you. So the purpose of this is to provide committee and council an update with respect to the year-end township surplus. I think if we recall back to when I originally presented, we were looking at about a $62,000 or $63,000 surplus. And now that all the audited entries are done, we have an operating surplus of $55,778.71. All the year-end entries have been completed and posted to the general ledger. This will be the last entry that needs to be done, is to, before I can close the books, is to how do we want to distribute the $55,000. So staff has put 3 options together for the 2022 operating surplus. Number one, given there was a significant insurance claim in 2023, it's prudent to establish a separate reserve account for deductibles paid, as individual departments do not typically budget for deductibles paid out in the event of a loss. This will allow individual departmental budgets to remain whole in the case of an insurance loss for future years. Staff would require direction from council to set up this account named insurance reserve and transfer the operating surplus of $55,778.71. Number 2 would be staff proposes that the operating surplus of $55,778.71 be allocated to the administration reserve account 01-3511 to offset insurance deductibles paid in 2023 and to cover the cost of some of the repairs from the damage to the township hall. Then option three is to do what was done in prior years, which is to have a discussion on the $55,000 based on the draws from 2022 to replenish some of those funds or whatever the direction is from council. So those are the 3 reports, and then the staff recommendation is option 1.
And staff recommendations. Okay, so let's open this up. Thank you for the report. So I'll open it up to committee for comment. So Mr. Henry, comment?
Well, I see it's I think a well thought out policy for this year with the loss you've had there. I don't really know from my information how much of the deductible the township will actually have to pay. Or that's how much will after that's paid will be left in that 55,000 in that reserve fund, or whether it's going to take it all to cover it. We never had one before. Unfortunately, we never had any major thing before. We got away with it, but I think it's a well thought out policy. I don't know, depending on how much the deductible is that you're paying this year, whether we need the whole 55,000. Put in there totally for reserve or whatever. Maybe the other recommendation or part of it, we use a big part of the cost of the damages might be considered. Yep, that'd be up to council.
Through the chair to Mr. Hunter. When we did our budget, administration budget, we did add in for the deductible. So it was caught early enough for the incident happened early enough for the year, but we haven't finalized the 2023 budget yet. So we do have that premium covered. Just any overages, we don't have that in there. But the deductible, which I think was 50,000. We do have that in the budget for 2023. So this is more meant for future loss items.
No? Okay.
Yeah, I can't go along with the option number one. I just don't think we need another. To offset, the deductibles paid for other departments. I'm hoping this is a one-shot deal, so, my recommendation, I might have number two staff propose the operating cost of 55,000 goes into the administration reserve. And to offset the insurance deductible, so, I just don't believe that we need another line in there for reserves on insurance claims, so that's my feelings on that.
I kind of think number two is probably the better option, but quick question, and I have no idea. If the money is in an insurance reserve, can it be used for anything else down the road, or does it have to stay there and be strictly used for an insurance related issue?
So through the chair, if option one was chosen, we would need to bring back the reserve and reserve fund bylaw back, and it would actually establish the purpose and define what it could be used for, set an upper and lower limit with respect to that. In noting that, I would say that with respect to claims, we have been dealing with, we probably have 3 or 4 claims on now, so, in each claim, the deductibles, like, they're going to, they take a substantial amount, and part of the feeling on was the last thing we want to do is start each department budget planning for a claim that doesn't happen, as opposed to having one pot to draw on if we need to draw on to a claim when it occurs, and then we're not impacting that, so to speak, that year budget. So that's. I know that the township office building is one of those other ones, but we have a couple, slip and falls on the bill right now. So, and sadly, I would say the trend is that there will be more coming towards municipalities than less. So that is kind of the feeling behind why we were looking at option.
That makes more sense. Yeah.
Anyone else? Or I do. So mine's more of a procedural question, because I quite like the report, like Mr. Hunter said, and I think it's well thought out. I think that there's certainly a need for it as you've described. My question is more of a procedural, is like procedure to be followed as much as we can. So we have a budget surplus bylaw that directs where the surplus should go, or what the procedures we use of where it should go. So without amending that bylaw, would we be breaking the bylaw by doing this?
So through the chair, council does have the option to funds to a different location.
So part of the bylaw allows us procedurally to do that without.
Correct. It does, and I believe that it was last year.
No, I remember the change.
With respect to the drainage, that we put the surplus towards the drainage projects.
Yeah,
And that's it. So, unless council decides otherwise, that the surplus would typically be allocated based on the forecasted capital projects. in this particular case. For what the amount is, I think that it serves the best purpose.
I don't disagree. I don't disagree. I just, want to be clear that it's appropriate. Procedurally to assign that money. This year, I mean, I know next year, obviously, we could write it in if we did and just not put it here, but we're not breaking any bylaw. I wasn't taxed to put into a new reserve account, but we're not breaking any rules by creating a new reserve account to put it in.
Through the chair, it's going to be used, that surplus will eventually get used. In that to offset operating costs, but.
So nothing inappropriate. That's my only concern
I
is,
certainly do not see it as inappropriate, because typically any surplus you would typically put into reserve and reserve funds. Unless you decide otherwise, so
Yeah.
all you're doing is just putting it into creating a new reserve.
new reserve.
So.
And that was where I was talking about the appropriateness, because if we only were allowed to put it in 2 or 3 of the reserve accounts. And it, what, that was part of the bylaw, because I honestly didn't read the bylaw, so. If that was the case, then it would be money that wasn't taxed for that purpose, and it would have to be allocated to one of those. That's sort of where my question was coming from. But that's not the case. And so that it makes it appropriate to create a new reserve and put it in there. And that's all that I just wanted to be very clear that it's not breaking procedure. So that's cool. Because if it was, I mean, that's good. Okay, so now there were a couple of different ideas on which number to support. Did anyone want to? Like the staff recommendation is that option 1 is the preferred option, but I know I did hear 2, and then I heard some changes. So let's just go back and do this again. I'm still going to ask the committee what the preferred option is as well, because you're here for guidance. So
I think one really, because the surplus is so small this year, I mean, you split it around all the departments, it's not going to affect their budget at all. And
yeah,
we have had more and more of these claims. And our insurance company don't like to fight anyone, they just want to pay them out.
one of the good.
Yeah.
I agree with number 1 as well.
And 2, sorry.
You too. Yeah.
Number 1, clarification.
Yeah, and I think I'm number 1 as well. So it's 2 to 1 as far as council goes. It's 4 to 1 as committee doesn't vote. I don't know how that's going to look with 2 more members of the next council meeting, but from a direction standpoint coming out of committee, it would be 2 to 1.
There is a recommendation.
Yeah. It's gonna fail though. You're not gonna get a seconder for the recommendation.
Through the chair, now that the committee structures are changed from previous council term, it reverts back to 2 council terms. So when it's defeated at committee level, especially when there's non-voting advisory members, it comes.
Because it's not gonna get a seconder. It's not gonna get a seconder tonight.
No, it would be different if all 5 council members were here tonight. I think the rules may have 3 or 5. Is what you should be doing.
Okay, so do I attempt to move it knowing what each person's stated? So you can't tell me what to do, but from a procedural standpoint.
So
it didn't fail.
I think I would not predetermine whether there is
It's a
a
second.
mover and
Okay.
a seconder.
Fair.
Just the same as with a bylaw, someone may vote against it, but they may actually be a mover or second.
Right, okay, so fair point, that's good. So, all right, I'll read the recommendation. That committee recommends that council implements option 1 and directs staff to set up the insurance reserve account in the general ledger and transfer the 2022 operating surplus of $55,778.71 to the newly created account. Do I have a mover? Moved by Councillor Smell. Do I have a seconder?
I'm gonna go. I'm not gonna let it. Yeah, I'll second.
All right, good. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. All right, so I do have a mover and a seconder, and I have a CAO who certainly is. Wisely beyond my thoughts, so thank you. So moved and seconded, further discussion on this? No, all right, then I'll call the vote on the recommendation, all in favor? Voted for it. Good for you. Fooled me completely.
Lots of things.
You are a statistical anomaly, that's for sure. All right. Number E is consent, F is consent, correct? Then we're on to the bait, just an update on the G would be the bait fuel fishing derby, so.
Here, I will have the parts, but utilities, this provides that update. Thank you. As the report indicates, Mr. Hooper, made a presentation back to council on the 28th of November. I met with Mr. Hooper and one of his executive members a week ago, Tuesday, the 25th. Down in Pelletier Park to review the logistics for the day. Currently right now, they have 65 anglers that have registered, and they're hoping to hit potentially the 80. So I just broken down the couple of the areas that we talked about. I took them to the parking areas that they will be parking some of their trucks and trailers. There was no issue there. At the weigh-in, they thought it was best if they utilized the two docks that are right in front of the canteen. One with the railing would be used, the boat would pull up, they would hand them their bag. Then they would fill their bag up and they would get out of the second dock. And they would set up right there. The tents would be right there. They would walk up the incline a little bit and cross the road and be right there. So as I indicated, we would close the road off during the afternoon portion so that the residents and just the general public can attend that area and not have to worry about the vehicles. If there is a vehicle that is at the far end, potentially was there in the morning for scuba diving, then I'll have set on hand to be able to coordinate those people if they need to come back through during the time of that road. So there'll be no machine on impact on that as well. And then the boat launch is indicating when they would be launching the boats in the morning, and then again in the afternoon when they would be coming back. And, during the off time, the general residents, because it's a Saturday, will be able to use the boat launch, and the local residents will be the ones who will be parking down there. Anyone that's part of the simple part number of the trucks and on the top side. So there will be lots of room down at the water for residents. That's a big deal on the weekend.
That's good. Good. I will say thank you for the work that you continue to do on this, and thank you for this. This is a good one. It's helpful. You can see I could almost visualize the way this is going to go. So I like this. Thanks. It's good. It's well done. Discussion on the bait fuel fishing derby update at all?
I just got a couple of questions. First of all, thanks, Mike. I've been excited. I've been trying to work with these guys for the last 3 or 4 years, so it's nice to see that it's finally coming together. We're going to be having a shuttle bus. So is it going to be moving constantly? Because we're putting in boats at 5:15 to 7 a.m. So we might have 4 or 5 go up at 5:15. So we just take them right away back down.
Through the chair.
And then-
Yeah, so the shuttle bus will be used for a period of probably 2 hours in the morning and then
Yeah.
2 hours at the end of the day.
Okay,
And-
so
and just
back and forth.
back and forth. Yeah.
Great job. Gonna be thousands of people there.
It's just the person to break it down, because when they drop their boat down, there's gonna be one driver that's gonna stay down.
There's 2 there, one's gonna hold the boat, the other one's gonna take
So they're
the.
only coming back on, we're gonna have just one of the small mini buses, that won't be a large bus.
Yeah,
So, because they're not really gonna have anything to carry, they might have an after that or something.
Yeah.
Primarily, everything out of the other.
good, well done.
Anyone else?
I think you're doing a great job, right? I just have one question, like, you're gonna shuttle one person at a time, or is it gonna be like 4 or 5 boats sitting in the water, waiting for their partner to come back, and then they pull up to the dock and load them on?
That is correct, yeah.
Okay, yeah, so it's, yeah, I think it's gonna be great, I can't wait to watch it, see it go.
Anything else? Nope.
Can't wait.
Everybody's happy except the bass.
That's right, yeah. And again, I know, you know, like you said, you've been pushing this one for a long time. It's a dream of yours for 4 years ago, so I'm happy to see the big fuel folks coming. Are they, you know, like is Mr. Hooper, you know, excited and looking forward to the.
Yeah, they were excited with the way this up, because they only had done kind of like a visual Google impact view from, you know, from home. They had never been on the site, so they were quite pleased and they were quite happy with the arrangements for the parking and what have you. The fact that the washings are right there as well for their volunteers through the day. And as I indicated to him, I would have staff on hand as well to facilitate any shortcomings that they may have for that.
Thanks, thanks so much, Mike. I see this as a very exciting time for a little township like ours to have the opportunity to host something like this.
Lots of pictures.
Been to a couple of them up on Rice Lake and it is one busy spot when they come in to weigh in, and it actually, if you're a fisherman or a fisher person, it's super exciting. So yeah, it's really cool. Awesome, thank you. Moving on, there's nothing on that one. So moving on to H, which is the firefighter honorarium policy update, and safe to assume the chief's speaking to this one. Everybody's nodding at me, so. There we go.
The fire department has been using a point-based system for honorarium for as long as I've been around, a lot longer than that. And it's simple to calculate and you can't go over budget. So fortunately, the drawback is that the value of a point is based on how many you're earning. So the end result is the more you do, the less you earn on a 5-point or 5-hour basis. With the introduction of firefighter certification, over 200 hours of mandatory training required in the first 36 minutes. And this 200 hours is minimum and does not include training on local procedures, equipment hazards unique to our own service. The demands placed on volunteer firefighters has changed considerably. Training and instruction requirements necessitate a change in the honorarium system to ensure volunteers not only dedicated but motivated to continue to serve. The proposed policy contains the following 3 changes. It's hourly based, based on certification level. So this is to motivate, encourage, and reward firefighters progressing through the certification process. It has a 2-hour minimum for attending emergency. We recognize and reward frequent disruption from family and full-time employer. And it also has a performance bonus rewarding those with exceptional participation. Policy implications. In general terms, the CRA does not consider volunteer firefighters an employee. The municipality can determine the honorarium based on its own circumstances. I provided 2 projections under financial considerations. The first is basically routine operations, so that'll be the first chart. And the second one is strictly for the required NFPA certification. And these were the calculation, the projections used for this year's budget ask. So the total projected honorarium for 2023 is 189.5. That being said, obviously the number of incidents, their duration, firefighter availability, and training course moments are uncertain, so it is definitely a projection. And it comes along with a recommendation that council repeal and replace the firefighter honorarium reimbursement policy and delegate authority to the fire chief to interpret the policy.
Thank you, Chief. All right, so let's open her up for discussion. So Karen, comments, questions, input?
Really, I mean, it seems, I read through it, it seems fair to me. I know they're volunteers, right? So it's trying to keep them, I would imagine, is hard enough. right? To have them come out. I know when I was in Northumberland County, the volunteers there. They had an awful time keeping them because, you know, they work regular jobs, and they get called out to the fires and the rescues and so on. They're just not. They're doing it because they love it, right? But not. Looking at it for them, really, so I mean, it makes sense to me.
Debbie?
I mean, I'm all for, as everybody I think in this room knows. Part-time firefighter as I was part of this. I do have some issues with this. The 20 honorary support of 60,000 coming to us now, and we already budget for 128 in 2023. And I have some issues with the honorary policies. Not everything, but a few questions. So I really like to, I mean, hear from anybody tonight, but I sure like to have it at least come back where it's, you know, it's capped at a certain amount, this NFPA certification courses, a max, because this can get really blown out of proportion. Price wise, so I just hope that I like to hear from other people, and I sure like to have the chief like the policy we applied retroactive. I don't believe that should be, and I believe it should be personal policy table from time to time. I don't believe that it should be cost of living index. So I have some issues on a lot on that. So I'm hoping that we can hear from other people here. And that we can maybe have another discussion down the road with some of this, but yeah, I'm really disappointed that we passed a 128 at our 2023 budget, and then we got another 60,000 slipped in here. I'm just scared that chief, you're going to be coming back here 6 months now and ask for bunk beds, which means full time. So that's my feelings. You have any comments?
Yep.
No. Yes, go ahead.
I just want to clarify that the 189.54 wasn't that 2023 budget, so it's not another additional 60,000 in the.
Of the 60,730 was part of the 189 as our budget.
Correct.
Yeah, how come we didn't see that? Part?
You would have been indicated that the difference wasn't increased, I believe. I forget what that exact increase was year over year. Around 80, 90.
Yeah, it's doubled, right?
It was done. I remember.
From 20. It's
I
doubled.
think it was 96.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah,
So there.
okay. So it's double.
So that, yeah, that was.
Yeah, okay.
And that's all.
Thank you. And like I said, I think we could work on the policy. So that's fine.
Through the chair, to the fire chief. How many total men do you have in the fire department?
Through the chair, I believe right now we are around 42 firefighters.
Okay, I have a couple more questions. Firemen. I don't know whether you know or not, but if you work at a factory, if you get called up to a fire, does the factory pay these people their wages while they're gone, or do you know that?
Through the chair, that would be up to the individual employer.
But you have no idea whether they do or not.
I mean, it's pretty rare.
Okay. And how many first class firemen do you have in second and third? Like, does it vary between which? Is it hard to get to be first class?
Through the chair, I would be guessing at numbers. We've had a lot of turnover, obviously, in the past few years. So I would say we had very few, firefighters on the force.
Good thing.
So,
I'm gonna throw a real blanket on the chief there, because I'm totally against this. This is a volunteer fire department. For the first 30 years, this fire department run on absolutely no gratuity. We started gratuities on a point system, and you're saying, well, the more you work, the less you get. Well, that's not correct. The points that were less per point, there's still more points you get, the more money you make. So the ones that show up for everything and work at everything get more money than the guys that just come to the odd training. And the last I heard of the definition of volunteer was something you volunteer your time for nothing. Not get paid minimum of $15.50 an hour for every hour that you show up. This is the first step to becoming a full-time paid fire department. Point system as a point system, they get money. And I agreed with that point system. I agreed with them still carrying, but I think if the township goes to lift it and start paying per hour, that volunteer better come off the badge and it better be Edwardsburg Cardinal Fire Department, not volunteer, because you're not a volunteer when you start to pay for every hour that you show up for something. So, and I think I'm one of the best supporters of fire department head over the years, and I don't mind supporting them, but if it comes time for that they're getting paid for every hour they're going to be there, I might have to seriously reconsider my support.
you have more to add?
Nope.
Is there, so my question, chief, is there a max? Like, does each person max out at any point? In like the old policy, I think, for a couple of the positions, they maxed out, right? So is there a max at this that one can get paid up to, or is it, they put in so many hours that just keeps building up and becomes,
There's no max.
And my other question that I had written is, why retroactive to 2022? What's the significance of, I think it was, I didn't write January 1st, but in my mind I have January 1st. So what's the significance of going back a full year and a half at this point?
Through the chair, that's just based on our calendar year, or like our calendar year. My intention was to have this, before now. But just based on the training that we're already progressing through, we've got a lot of people working a lot of hours, and they should be compensated fairly for.
So we're looking at going back 18 months worth of retroactive.
Oh, I thought it was the one in 2020.
It was December, January, sorry, I'm just making sure.
So the typical, so the honorarium for 2022 would have been paid in November. Wow, it probably turned into December 2022. It would, the system would go until November 30th, 2022. So that's the cutoff for 2022. 2023 would start December 2022, go to November 30th, 2023 as that stop date. If that makes.
Yeah, so we'd be applying it till December, hours worked till December 1st. The new policy would apply from December 1st, 2022 for this full year.
As,
Yeah.
as being proposed.
Okay, and so the next question is, and I think it's to staff, and so I think it's the fourth bullet point under procedure. Table 1 will be adjusted annually for CPI as amended from time to time. So what exactly are we signing up for if we pass this policy? What exactly does that implicate? Is that 6.2 this year? Would that be 6.2 like we wouldn't have any say in that, or?
So it's through the chair, it would have been incorporated in, and I'm not sure the exact date, but it was basically, I want to say, it may have been 2016 when that may come in, but it was just a whatever the non-union personnel received, that would be the same amount that common varying would have went up. So I think it's just basically that. So in this particular year, that would have been 3%. So that will basically incorporated council. You would receive a cost of living. Understand that council did not take that this year, but it's in a number of policies with respect to that to try to stay current. In that regard.
So the numbers that are created in this are close, or I'm very close to minimum wage. I'm assuming that's what was used to create it. The intention isn't to continue along with minimum wage, to continue it, it's to get it to this dollar value and then continue to increase that value as far as CPI. We're, the next min-wage increase that we see through the province, it won't be applied to this and then CPI on top of that. That's my.
Through the chair, that is correct. That's why what I would just be the annual CPI. I don't believe that it was specifically based on minimum wage, but I think certainly defer to the chief if I'm incorrect on that.
Sure, that's where that base rate came from, was it, I think that's actually one behind now. But yes, that's where that.
Remember, the number was reflective of what the minimum wage was at the time the policy was created, right? And it wasn't your intention though to continue to increase that to make it minimum wage plus CPI, or is it just to start? This was the number you picked to start with.
My intention was to start with the figures on the table.
Yeah. Okay. All right. I don't know what I think. So I'm not sure where to go from here. Don't think that I have support for the policy that they've got.
So, Mr. Chair, if there is some direction that could be provided back to staff to take away to look at that, or it can be brought up at the next committee meeting.
Yeah, certainly. I'm not sure that there's, and I'm not sure how to work direction out of this group. I certainly heard they don't, want a full-time or a step towards a full-time fire department. There's fear over the policy. I haven't heard though how it could be augmented to their liking, so that it would get it where it needs to be. So I'll go through another round of questions. If that's, I'll allow people to make more comments and see if some direction comes out of it, but I don't, right now, I'm not really sure what that direction is, other than that, it's not to everyone's power.
To the chair, I'm the same opinion right now.
Yeah.
It would be appreciated if we had at least some better understanding of where those pinch points are with respect to that, and if there is a specific opinion that we should revisit again.
Yeah, okay. So how do we come up with something that's a little more palatable to the group? So I know that's a tough one, Karen. So but do you want to?
I mean, You had mentioned a cap. I mean, is there an option of putting a cap on what could be potentially earned? I know, you know, we talked about them being volunteers and that volunteers aren't paid, but then volunteers don't generally get called away from their business work. You know, if I'm volunteering for something, I'm doing it on my own time after hours or whatever. I'm not leaving my job and losing money there to go and pull someone out of a car wreck or something like this. So I mean, I think there's a big difference there. I mean, yes, they're volunteering, but they're losing money at the same time to volunteer and help out. So, you know, it's either you have a volunteer fire department that you compensate in some form, or you have a fire department where you're fully paying for the employees.
Yeah, like I said, I'm all for them, but I'm leaning against, I mean, in our old system, we did have a max, so why can't we, I don't mind up and down. Captain had $1,200 max. So, I mean, I'm agreeable maybe to upping it to 24 or something like that for an example. I just think that we should be looking more in line where we're going to keep the fire department happy and the members and with their training. I realize that the training has changed over the years, especially now with the NFPAs that they have to get through. I just don't like that hourly rate, never did. And like I said, we have this one, it doubled. We give them uniforms, we give them every possible training. I just don't want to see the bunk beds, that's all. That's what scares me. That part. But I mean, I just wish we could give staff or the chief direction to maybe come up with a better classification of not an hourly rate.
Yeah, there is no limits in our current system. You're referring to the officer, and I don't think that is no longer part of the system. An officer would make $1 per hour or $2 more per hour. So that max is gone. So the only max in our system now is the budget amount. So the max thing isn't a thing right now. As far as the training goes, the two different budgets, the NFPA training budget is obviously going to drop over the years as we get our members trained. So I would suspect that $60,000 that would be asked for this year for NFPA training would be less next year, because technically we should have less people to train. When we get to 2026, hopefully we've got less and less people to train, and we're basically onboarding people, and we have a handful that need to go through that process and get it done in 3 years. With that 60,000 for NFPA training, I can see that dropping over the years as we get caught up.
And my comment to that is, Chief, that's great, but I do see in the last 4 years, going on 5 years, we're losing a lot of people, and then we're bringing on new people, so we're right back to training right from scratch. So, I mean, I can appreciate where you're coming from, but I don't think it's going to drop that much.
Well, you answered a few questions I haven't heard yet. So, just out of curiosity, how many hours a month would a man put into training? Like, I noticed, like, years ago, you used to go to fire department or fire hall on Monday. That would be it. You'd have to come back to the next Monday, but now it's sitting there like, I don't know. So is there more hours they're putting in for?
So through the chair, without the NFPA certification stuff going on, it's generally 3 Mondays a month, roughly 2 hours each month. So there'd be 2 trainings, and it would be one night for apparatus maintenance. Which again is going to save us a fight.
And what would the average be that a fireman would make, like, for the year? Like, do you get paid every week, like us, every 2 weeks, or? Is it once a year?
For the chair, once a year. And check once a year. And we have, 42 people, like I said, last year was 96,000. Obviously, it's not like more.
Yeah. Okay,
Really good.
thank you.
Mr. Hunter?
I'm still got hourly wages on there, and I got dedicated. And the state, yes, they're volunteers and they leave their job, and that's what the township years ago, why a point system was started, and when the fund was set up. They record points for being on their thing, and they're given a certain gratuity for taking time off and losing time from their money that they made at their jobs, but when you start setting a wage here in this budget, no cap whatsoever of how many hours they're gonna come into the fire hall and work. This becomes a second job, not a volunteer. And I've spoken, had 3 or 4 firefighters that I've spoken to. And they weren't thrilled about this hourly wage at all, because it meant nothing to them, because the money they make in their job, they gotta claim this as taxes, that just gonna turn around and pay it tax. They were, well, 3 I talked to were all keen about getting an hourly wage. They were volunteers because they were volunteers. So I just like to know just how much support among the 40-some firefighters, how much support there actually is among the rank and file members who actually want to get paid an hourly wage. So
That question? For comment?
I just don't. I just didn't think it was funny. I think we had a system over the years on council. I never heard too many complaints of the point system. Every time, once in a while, they want to raise it up, and we raised it up according to cost of living, one thing or another, and raised it up. But I never really heard too many complaints. I don't know whether the other members of council have been getting complaints about the point system or not, so. Your council has to deal with this.
Yes. Yeah, thanks for Councilor Smith.
I just have one more question through the chair to Clarky. Is there any comparison on what the other departments in the area are getting? Are we way below Augusta and Kempville and Dearborn?
I don't have the numbers specifically. I would think we would be below our neighbors to the east, and probably on par with our neighbors to the north.
Currently or with this policy?
With this ball.
With this.
Through the chair, just a comment on Mr. Hunter's concern about the hours. The hours being spent at a fire hall are directed by us. The policy lays out that there's only approved duties that are completed. So I don't want you to think that it's a wide open policy that any time someone's at the fire hall on a whim to clean a truck or do something that this would apply specifically for training and fire calls and other duties that are needed.
If anybody else has any questions, I just have a couple. So is there a reason for I mean, I understand that we're trying to increase the honorarium, I think, and make it reflective of the time and commitment that goes in. Is that fair?
Absolutely.
Okay. And I support that concept. So, but does there ever, or does it have to be this policy? Like, you know, I know Mr. Hunter's saying, you know, that there were updates made to the current point system. Is the point system just obsolete? Is that why we're going to a completely new system, or?
Through the chair, I would say it's obsolete. I mean, the service we have now with the training and responsibilities, we're called volunteer, but you've got the same responsibilities as an employee. Our officers have the same responsibility as a supervisor. They're held liable to pay the supervisor. Now we've got, all this extra training that has to happen. And I couldn't tell somebody, you know, you're gonna join the fire department, and you need to spend this 200 hours to get all this special training, plus an extra 6 hours a month doing the normal training. And then you're gonna do $4 an hour, because, you know, it's values to solve, it's not, you know, there's no value there. And again, I realize it's a volunteer fire department, but it's not 60 years ago. There are lots of options for people to spend their money doing lots of different things that were around 60 years ago. I think we need to make a change, or we're planning on keeping people on fire service. We need to make a change.
And I think if I'm correct in what I'm hearing up here and around the table is that we don't want a fire department that is considered an employee. We want to, I think, as volunteers. I mean, I think that's what I'm hearing, and I certainly understand. I think where you're coming from. It's just it's a difficult spot. I wasn't expecting to end up here tonight. So
Not that that's where I'm going, but what's
well, I'm not sure that it's certainly not a discussion I was anticipating tonight of having, you know, what's considered, like the deputy mayor said, of having bunks in there and creating a full-time fire department. I don't. Well, sure, but we're also moving on from a volunteer association that gets an honorarium and isn't considered an employee. So, you know, that it's a little deeper dive than I was anticipating, and I think there's more thought that has to go into that goes into this before we go further. So, to the CAO.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If we turn to the bottom of page 44 or top of page 45, I'm gonna go there a little bit different. Can we get at least some indication from the committee that they feel that there should be some type of recognition based on the certification level that you achieve, the skills that you find to invest those skills, just on a general basis. Didn't say an hourly. I said, do we?
I think if I may, CAO, I hear what you're trying to do, and I respect that. I think though, I think maybe, you know, do we have the exact old policy? The entire old policy here on how exactly someone's paid is here. There's nothing missing, like exactly how that policy would apply to every single firefighter, how they would get their honorarium in December is included in the package. So we can compare them side to side.
Following
Mhm. That's the entire policy then? I think we're gonna have to do a little more thinking. I think this conversation is important. I think it needs to happen. But I think out of respect, there's two members of council missing tonight. I know that, you know, that's part of being at council. But it's not a divided group. I don't know that there's a lot of support for this policy up here. So in the first place, and I don't know that we're going to get where staff wants us to get tonight anyway. So in my opinion, I would prefer to put it off and have the discussion later with the committee again after having a chance to review this for.
Through the chair, with all due respect, staff isn't going to get maybe anywhere other than, what I would certainly like to know is whether some of those major attributes is something that can be worked with so that we can return from the staff level and further discussion.
And I think, you know, there is a recommendation that's attached to this, right? So. You know, and that is the committee recommends council that comes, you know, from staff. What I'm saying is I think the committee needs more time. So to interpret this, to think it over for a month and to come back and have that discussion again.
I certainly agree. We don't believe that answering the 3 questions that I was going to propose would determine that you're going to approve that recommendation. It's quite clear that the recommendation is not coming forward tonight. What I'd like to do is instead of just passing on for another month, I'd like to see if there's something that we can do from a staff level in between there to answer some of those questions that you may have, or potentially use some type of modification.
So I'll take that to the group at the table and I'll say, would you rather have a month to chew on it, or do you want to try to break it down and give more direction back on what to come back with different than this? So do you want to see the same policy again, have a month to think about it, come back with some suggestions then? Or do we want to try to work through those suggestions or those questions tonight to give direction back to come back with a better policy? That's the way I'm understanding. So
all I'm looking for, I asked the question, is a simple yes or no. I'm not changing the policy. I'm trying to get an understanding if the base principles are something that could be worked on during that month. So that potentially when that discussion comes back up next month, and some of those questions that may arise, we have a better understanding, have a better prepared to be able to answer that and maybe more productive discussion. That's all. Or we can just leave it as is, and we're doing exactly the same thing, and staff will spend no additional time in the next month on this policy.
yes.
Duly chair to the CEO. So you're saying, can we work with it? Now, are you saying with the honorarium where it says, for an example, fire inspection prevention, hours spent?
So, through the chair, I'm not getting into that level. So where it starts, where the policy starts on page 47, I'm not even talking about it. I'm on page 44, the bottom, and 45. All I'm asking is, generally speaking, does the committee think that there should be something in place to recognize certification levels that be earned through NFPA program? It's not holding anybody to anything other than just generally speaking, are you for it or are you against it?
Does committee want to go down that road, or does anyone want to continue this conversation a month from now? Yes.
I might just give a suggestion for council, 5 years ago, make a decision on what you want to do. I think it'd be appropriate for you, CEO could get a copy of the reimbursement policies from North Granville and Augusta and Preston and South Dundas, and look at their policies and see what their policies is, I'd give you a lot more guidance, maybe where you want to go, you're saying you want to keep the fire department in line with the neighbors and stuff, and said this is the guide behind, you want to keep them, everybody needs to put in. Maybe let's need some more information, on what the neighbors, how they look at it, I'd give you more guidance on how to use one of them.
It's certainly a great suggestion, but
we can work with it. I can work with it. But with the NFPA levels, with the financial. I think we could come to, I think we could work with myself. With the fire department and the CEO, but it's gonna take time.
So the suggestion of getting, reimbursement policies from our neighbors. So
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
And so so with the question that was posed from the CAO,
I can work with it. I hope. I'm willing to try.
Not going to work it out.
well, me too. I'm still a little lost, like, I think there's direction now to get more information. As well, I think you're hearing that everybody's willing to work with it. I think at this point, I think, if it was me, I would prefer that somebody move to defer. And we would have staff come back with the same policy that has reimbursement policy attached to it from our neighboring attachments, so that we do make that good informed decision. There's not.
So, Chair, I think if you're what you're really looking for is getting first. Policy.
Yeah, do they have honoring, do they have point systems? Right. What do they have?
That's the starting point.
I think as much information or as that we could get would be helpful as we continue this discussion. I know and I understand it, but it's retroactive. Going back to the start of it here, it'll have to be, that'll have to continue here retroactive. Like it, there's a want to move the policy along, but I think from the group that's here, again, I know I've said that before, but I just think if I don't get the sense here at the table that we're going to get there. I think we need, I don't think that we're going to be able to move a recommendation. So I'd further moved on from the discussion. I think we've had enough discussion on it, and we'll just look for that more information at the next meeting. Is that fair? Fair. Okay. Okay, so hopefully this one's better. 8I, which is amending the Spencerville Department of Environmental Compliance approval. Is CAO going to speak, or Mr. Shaw, or Eric? Mr. Government.
Water sewer operator, and then give the introduction. Question, your estimates.
Awesome, thank you.
For the chair, we're here to seek approval to initiate an application with the Ministry of Environment Conservation and Parks to release the new ECA. Spencerville sanitary system was commissioned in 1989. ECAs are pretty much legal documents that are legal documents that include the system description, system capacity, sampling, and discharge conditions, effluent concentration limits, and annual reporting requirements. Our current ECA requires us to discharge our renewals between March 15th and April 21st inclusive, with the minimum of duration of 8 days. We're required to collect 2 sets of samples, 1 week prior to discharge, and 2 samples collect a permit while discharging, and submit a report by June 30. Our current capacity is 116,000 cubic meters. Our spring discharge window has created operational challenges as ice conditions and unpredictable weather prevents discharge until early in April. We are required to begin the lagoon's discharge by April 13th or request an emergency order to extend that discharge window. As part of the application, we will be requesting an extension to spring discharge period to reduce operational challenges we face meeting that window. The Spencer Lagoon system's current average capacity is 73% annually since 2013. And NECP guidelines recommend that when a system reaches 80%, owners should be investigating expansion options before adding new development to the system. The developer has expressed interest in developing in the Spencer area and potentially connecting to the Spencer Center system. As part of the application process, we will also be requesting a second discharge in the fall. Second discharge would increase the lagoon loading capacity, allow for additional development, and eliminate the need to request an emergency fall discharge during successively wetter cold years. The additional lagoon annual capacity from the second discharge is currently unknown, but would be determined during the review process of the ministry. A third reason why we want to update our ECA is that during the 2019 inspection, an administrative non-compliance was identified with the current ECA. ECA does not list our Allen Rosen pump, our storage tanks, flow meter, and sharp are located in the building. There's also incorrect address listed in the ECA. These discrepancies would be addressed if we do an ECA. We've had preliminary discussions with the NECP who are favorable for amending the ECA. Obtaining additional capacity aligns with the province's commitment to increase affordable housing for the province. As part of the process, the NECP would require a full stream assessment. This assessment must be conducted by a qualified professional to determine if extending and creating a new discharge window will have any serious impacts to the environment. The NECP will also review the study to determine that additional treatment systems, i.e. UV disinfection, may be required. Additional things that the ministry may add to our update ECA is there may be more stringent effluent requirements, improved effluent flow monitoring, additional annual reporting requirements, and potentially groundwater monitoring around the lagoons. Our current ECA is still remain in effect until a new one is issued. Policy implications are this is a legal requirement process to amend ECA. A preliminary cost are estimated to be $200 administrative fee and an additional $11,000 to the NECP to the technical review. The cost to complete the receiving stream assessment and any additional studies required by the ministry is currently unknown. Our wastewater reserve fund as of March 2023 has a balance of $405,378.56. The cost of the ECA amendment could be covered through a reserve fund, and a portion of the cost could be recouped as new connections are added to our system. Our recommendation is that we recommend that council direct staff to initiate the application process.
Good, thank you, Mr. Emmer. All right. Discussion, so we'll just go through the table real quick. Mr. Emmer.
I think this has been discussed over the last council too, and it's I think it's got to be done. So you want to expand, you got a chance for the development to take place there that we're working on. So I think that's the full time for the money to be spent on it and get it. We've run into trouble. This is the first time we've run into discharge trouble in the spring. Pretty near 6 or 7 years ago, we pretty near reached the capacity there. Almost overflowing the banks there in the town of that. So I think trying to get a fall discharge, I think, really looking at the future and say future expansion, if you get into the development or something there, they'll have to expand that. Size of that lagoon would be costly, so.
Discharge. Councilor Smith?
Well, I've been to the lagoon and stuff, but I really appreciate what John has been saying, because I think it's time to expand and get rid of it. It's getting old and things are coming, so I agree with John.
Yeah, no, I think you people remember I brought up last council. Did we ask for another discharge? And I got that idea actually from the CEO, when we were discussing the future of our lagoons. So I think this is the right idea, right direction to go. Hopefully MECP will give us some good guidelines on where we stand. I'm concerned about the life, and if we do expand down the road in the town of Spencerville, how much can we expand before we're in trouble? So we're not in trouble, but you know, we're at our limits. So thank you very much, and I'm all for to take it out of reserves to get this moving. Thank you.
No,
Thank you, Eric. Well done.
All right.
It's an easy one.
Yeah, I think that this ends when we're 7% away from the 80% threshold, and this will buy us some extra percentage and some extra time, so that we don't hit that 80%, I think, correct?
Because it's ideas.
It's through the tail road, you're approximately 80% this past year.
Oh, there we go.
How much,
84%.
So we need a second discharge then for sure. If we're gonna put it. Okay. All right, so we certainly have strong support at the table. There's a recommendation there. The recommendation reads that committee recommends that council direct staff to initiate the application process with the MECP to modify ECA number 3-137-87-896 and cover the cost of the application and studies from the Spencerville Wastewater Reserve Fund, which is 98-3806, to an upset limit of $30,000. Can I have a mover?
Yep.
So moved, seconded, further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Good, move on. Then we are on councilors' inquiries and notice of motion. Does anyone have an inquiry or notice of motion?
Okay.
Paige, you don't? No. Okay, so I do, and my inquiry, or I guess it would be a notice of motion or an inquiry. I'm not sure how this works, but I'd like to see a discussion at the earliest convenience. Whatever committee that it should go to. I don't think that needs to happen, too early, but whenever it's convenient and there's an agenda that can accommodate a discussion, a review, and potentially update that flag bylaw. And hopefully we could include as part of that the locations where we fly flags that are municipal property. And so hearing none, I do not have a mayor's report. There are no members present for question period. We do not have a closed session. I need a mover for adjournment. So moved. Seconded by Councilor Smith. All in favor or adjourned? Mr. Ware. Oh, yeah.